Bo Price woke to a knock at dawn and a dead girl on his porch. By noon, the town had a rope and a tree picked out. Now Bo has until sunset to find the killer or be the body they bury instead. Dust Creek was a place forgotten by time, a speck of civilization clinging to the edge of the vast, unforgiving West. Bo Price was a ghost haunting its outskirts. He lived in a small, weathered cabin, a relic of a life he desperately tried to leave behind. The war had changed him, leaving scars both visible and hidden deep within his soul. He preferred the company of the wind and the rustling sagebrush to the prying eyes and idle gossip of the town. Bo was a former Army scout, his skills honed in the crucible of conflict. He could read the land like a book, track a whisper across the plains, and survive where others would perish. But those skills, once a source of pride, now felt like a burden, a constant reminder of the violence he had witnessed and the things he had done. He sought solace in isolation, hoping to bury the past beneath the weight of routine and quiet solitude. But the past, like the desert sun, had a way of scorching everything in its path. The sun, a molten coin in the sky, was just beginning to peek over the horizon as Bo pushed open his cabin door. He stepped out, the familiar scent of sage and dust filling his lungs. He needed to check the well. But what greeted him wasn't the familiar sight of his weathered pump. Lying on his porch, bathed in the pale morning light, was a girl. A young girl no older than 16, her eyes wide and vacant, staring up at the awakening sky. Her dress, once a cheerful blue, was now stained a gruesome red. A single crimson rose lay clutched in her lifeless hand. Bo froze, his blood turning to ice. He knew instantly that his quiet life was over. The peace he had so desperately sought had been shattered, replaced by a nightmare far worse than any he had faced on the battlefield. He knelt beside her, his calloused hand reaching out, then retracting as if burned. He didn't know her, he'd never seen her before. But she was dead on his porch, and that meant only one thing: trouble. Before Bo could even formulate a plan, the first sounds of Dust Creek stirred. A rooster crowed, a dog barked, and then the unmistakable rumble of a wagon approaching. It was Jade, the milkman, making his morning rounds. He saw Bo, saw the girl, and his jaw went slack. Bo, what in tarnation? The news spread through Dust Creek like wildfire. Within the hour, Sheriff Clem, a man whose belly strained against his starched shirt, arrived with a small posse of townsfolk. Their faces were grim, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Price," Clem drawled, his voice heavy with accusation. "Care to explain this?" He gestured towards the body with a thick thumb. Bo stood his ground, trying to keep his voice steady. "I just found her, I don't know anything about this." But his words fell on deaf ears. The townsfolk muttered amongst themselves, their distrust of the outsider, the quiet recluse bubbling to the surface. They saw a loner, a man with a dark past, and a dead girl on his porch. The equation was simple, and the answer in their minds was already decided. "He's always been a strange one," someone whispered. "Keeps to himself," probably snapped. The sun climbed higher, intensifying the heat and the simmering animosity. Sheriff Clem, swayed by the growing unease of the crowd, declared, "Price, you're coming with me. We'll sort this out at the jail." "Jail for what? I didn't do anything," Bo protested, but his words were drowned out by the rising murmur of the townsfolk. "He's lying," someone shouted. "He's got that look in his eye." The air crackled with tension. Clem, a man who preferred order to justice, saw the tide turning. All right, everyone calm down," he said unconvincingly. "Let's just get him to jail and we'll figure this out." But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Fear, fueled by years of unspoken resentment towards the outsider, was taking root. The townsfolk, desperate for someone to blame, found their target in Bo Price. The wheels of injustice had begun to turn, grinding relentlessly towards a predetermined outcome. Bo knew with a chilling certainty that the jail wouldn't be a safe haven. It would be a cage waiting for the executioner. As Clem led Bo towards the jail, the murmuring crowd transformed into something far more menacing. Whiskey bottles appeared, passed around with increasing frequency. Voices grew louder, bolder. The fear that had initially fueled their suspicion now morphed into righteous anger, stoked by alcohol and the mob mentality. "Hang him!" someone roared, the cry echoing through the dusty street. "Hang him now!" Others joined in, their voices rising in a bloodthirsty chorus. Clem, caught between his duty and the will of the mob, hesitated. He knew he couldn't control them for long. A rope, seemingly out of nowhere, was produced. It was a thick, coarse rope, the kind used for cattle, now twisted into a noose. The mob surged forward, their eyes burning with a feverish intensity. Clem's deputies, outnumbered and outmatched, could only stand by, their faces pale with fear. Bo knew this was it. He could feel the heat of their hatred, the palpable desire for vengeance. The law had failed him. Justice was a distant dream. He was on his own. He glanced at the setting sun, a fiery reminder of the dwindling time he had left. He had to escape. He had to find the real killer, or he would die. Bo knew he couldn't reason with the mob, nor could he expect any help from Sheriff Clem. He was alone, facing a town consumed by prejudice and bloodlust. The sun was already beginning its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, a beautiful but grim reminder of the hours slipping away. He had one day to prove his innocence, one day to uncover the truth, one day to save his own life. It seemed impossible, a task akin to finding a single grain of sand in the vast desert. But he had no other choice. He had to act, and he had to act fast. As the mob surged closer, Bo saw his opportunity. A momentary lapse in their focus, a slight hesitation from Clem. It was all he needed. With a burst of adrenaline, he shoved Clem aside, knocking him off balance, and bolted. The mob roared in outrage, their pursuit immediate and relentless. Bo didn't look back. He ran, fueled by desperation and the primal instinct to survive. He had to clear his name, not for them, but for himself. He wouldn't let them define him. He was more than just a recluse, more than just an outsider. He was Bo Price, and he would not be hanged for a crime he didn't commit. Bo slipped into the shadows, using his knowledge of the terrain to evade his pursuers. He knew he couldn't outrun them forever. He needed information. He needed to find out who the girl was and why she was on his porch. His first stop was the saloon, the heart of Dust Creek's gossip. He entered cautiously, his eyes scanning the room. The saloon went silent. All eyes turned to him, filled with hostility and suspicion. "Get out, Price," barked the saloon owner, a burly man with a face like a clenched fist. "We don't serve murderers here." Bo ignored him, his gaze fixed on a group of men huddled in a corner. He recognized one of them, Old Man Hemlock, a known busybody. "Hemlock," Bo said, his voice low and steady. "Who was that girl, the one found this morning?" Hemlock spat on the floor. "Why should I tell you anything, you murdering dog?" Bo's hand instinctively went to the knife hidden beneath his coat. He didn't want to resort to violence, but he was running out of time. "Because," he said, his voice hardening, "your life might depend on it." The tension in the saloon thickened, a palpable threat hanging in the air. Getting answers wouldn't be easy. Dust Creek wasn't just hostile, it was a fortress of secrets, and Bo was an unwelcome invader. As Bo pressed Hemlock for answers, a flicker of memory ignited within him. A dusty canyon, the acrid smell of gunpowder, the desperate cries of men. He saw himself, younger, leaner, his eyes sharp and focused, tracking an enemy patrol across the unforgiving terrain. He was a scout then, a shadow, a ghost. He knew how to read the signs, how to anticipate danger, how to survive. The flashback faded as quickly as it came, replaced by the harsh reality of the saloon. But the memory had sharpened his resolve. He wasn't just a recluse running from his past. He was a skilled tracker, a survivor. He could use those skills again. Another image flashed, a burning village, innocent faces contorted in fear, the weight of a terrible decision. He had made choices in the war, choices that haunted him still. Had those choices led him here? Was he being punished for the sins of his past? He pushed the thought aside. He couldn't afford to dwell on the past, not now, not when his life depended on solving the present. But the glimpses into his past served as a reminder. He was capable of violence, capable of making hard choices, and he might have to make them again. Hemlock, unnerved by Bo's intensity, finally relented. Her name was Sarah, Sarah Miller, the preacher's daughter. The preacher's daughter. Bo knew the preacher, a stern, unyielding man who held Dust Creek in his moral grip. What would Sarah Miller be doing anywhere near Bo's cabin? It didn't make sense. As Bo continued to press Hemlock, a few more details emerged, whispered reluctantly. Sarah had been seen arguing with Caleb, the blacksmith's son, a few days before. Caleb was known for his quick temper and possessive nature. There were rumors about Sarah and the land surveyor, a young man named Thomas, who had arrived in Dust Creek just a few months ago. He was charming and educated, everything Caleb wasn't. Bo realized he was stepping into a tangled web of hidden relationships and simmering resentments. Dust Creek wasn't the simple, quiet town he had thought it to be. Beneath the surface of everyday life, a storm of secrets was brewing, and Sarah Miller's death had ripped the lid off, exposing the darkness within. He had to tread carefully. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone had something to hide, the rose in her hand. Was it a message, a clue? To find out. Leaving the saloon, Beau felt the weight of the town's suspicion pressing down on him. He needed more than rumors, he needed proof. He remembered seeing a young boy, barely 10 years old, fishing near the creek that morning, not far from his cabin. Maybe he had seen something. Beau found the boy, named Billy, sitting on the bank, his fishing rod forgotten. Billy was jumpy, his eyes wide with fear. "Billy," Beau said gently, kneeling beside him. "Did you see anything unusual this morning?" "Near my cabins." Billy hesitated, his lower lip trembling. I don't know anything, mister." Beau could see the fear in his eyes. Someone had gotten to him, warned him to keep quiet. "It's okay, Billy," Beau said, his voice soothing. "You can trust me. I didn't hurt Sarah. I need your help to find out who did." Billy looked at Beau, his eyes searching for the truth. Finally, he whispered, "I saw someone running away from your cabin early, before the sun was up." "Who, Billy? Who did you see?" Billy shook his head, his eyes darting around nervously. "I can't say. He'll hurt me. He'll hurt my family." Beau knew he was close, but Billy's fear was a wall he couldn't easily break down. He had to find a way to convince him to speak, to overcome the terror that gripped him. The truth was within reach, but it was guarded by a powerful force, fear. Knowing he couldn't force Billy to speak, Beau left him with a promise to keep him safe. He knew he needed to confront Sheriff Clem despite the risks. He found Clem outside the church, talking to the preacher, his face grim. "Clem," Beau said, his voice cutting through the air. "We need to talk." Clem turned, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. "Price, I should arrest you on sight." "Arrest me for what? For being framed?" Beau retorted. "You haven't even bothered to investigate anyone else. You just saw a convenient scapegoat and jumped at the chance." "I'm doing my job, Price," Clem said, his voice defensive. "I'm trying to keep the peace." "By letting an innocent man hang," Beau challenged. "Did you even ask anyone about Sarah? Did you know she was arguing with Caleb, or that she was seen with Thomas, the surveyor?" Clem's eyes narrowed. "Those are just rumors, Price. You're grasping at straws." "Are they, or are you deliberately ignoring them because they don't fit your narrative?" Beau stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Tell me, Clem, why are you so quick to condemn me? What are you trying to hide?" The air crackled between them, thick with suspicion and unspoken accusations. Beau knew he was walking a dangerous line, but he had to push Clem to expose the sheriff's motives, to force him to see the truth, or at least to reveal what he was hiding. Beau's accusations clearly struck a nerve. Clem's face flushed crimson and he snarled, "That's enough, Price. You're under arrest now." Beau knew he couldn't stay. He had pushed too far. Clem was no longer just suspicious, he was actively hostile. He turned and ran, dodging Clem's outstretched hand. "Get him!" Clem shouted, and the chase was on again. This time, however, it wasn't just the lynch mob he was running from, it was the law itself. The stakes had been raised. The town, already against him, now had the full authority of the sheriff on their side. He sprinted through the back alleys of Dust Creek, his lungs burning, his muscles screaming in protest. He could hear the shouts of the townsfolk, the pounding of their boots on the dusty ground, the baying of dogs. He was being hunted like an animal. He had to get out of town. He had to find a place to hide, a place to regroup, a place to figure out his next move. But where could he go? Everyone in Dust Creek wanted him dead. He was running out of options, and the sun was sinking lower in the sky, casting long, ominous shadows across the hostile landscape. The noose was tightening and time was running out. Just as Beau thought he was cornered, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Martha, the town's seamstress, a woman ostracized for her eccentric ways and her sharp tongue. She was an unlikely ally, an outcast herself, someone who understood what it was like to be judged and misunderstood. "Price," she hissed, beckoning him closer. "Get in here." Beau hesitated, but he had no other choice. He slipped into the alleyway, following Martha into the back of her small shop. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice wary. Martha snorted. "Don't flatter yourself, Price. I'm not doing it for you. I knew Sarah. She used to come to me for dresses. She was a good girl, despite what that old windbag preacher thinks." Martha explained that Sarah had confided in her about her troubles with Caleb and her growing feelings for Thomas. She also mentioned a mysterious letter Sarah had received a few days ago, a letter that seemed to have deeply troubled her. She told me she was going to meet someone that night, Martha said, her voice low. Someone she didn't trust. She asked me to keep the letter safe just in case. Martha's help was a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. She was the first person who had treated him with kindness, the first person who seemed to believe in his innocence, and she held a key piece of the puzzle, the mysterious letter. Martha retrieved the letter from a hidden compartment in her sewing machine. It was addressed to Sarah, unsigned but written in elegant script. As Bo read it, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The letter revealed that Sarah's father, the preacher, was deeply in debt to a ruthless land baron who was trying to seize control of Dust Creek. Sarah had discovered evidence of the baron's illegal activities and was planning to expose him. The letter warned her to stay silent, threatening her and her family if she didn't comply. Bo remembered the crimson rose clutched in Sarah's hand. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a symbol, a warning. The land baron, known for his ruthlessness, often left a rose as a calling card. Billy's testimony, the rumors about Caleb and Thomas, Clem's reluctance to investigate, it all made sense now. The land baron had silenced Sarah, and Clem, likely in the baron's pocket, was trying to frame Bo to protect him. The real killer wasn't some jealous lover or a random madman. It was a powerful, influential man who was willing to do anything to maintain his grip on Dust Creek. And Bo, by simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, had become a pawn in his deadly game. He knew what he had to do. It was time to confront the land baron and expose his crimes, even if it meant risking everything. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across Dust Creek as Bo approached the land baron's opulent mansion. It was a stark contrast to the humble homes of the townspeople, a symbol of the baron's wealth and power. He found the baron, a man named Silas Thorne, sitting on the porch sipping whiskey. Clem stood beside him, his face a mask of guilt and defiance. "Thorne," Bo said, his voice ringing out across the yard, "I know what you did." Thorne chuckled, a cold, humorless sound. "Price, I was wondering when you'd show up. Clem told me you were causing trouble." "Sarah Miller knew about your illegal dealings," Bo said, holding up the letter. "She was going to expose you, so you silenced her." Thorne's eyes hardened. "She was a meddling fool. She threatened everything I've worked for." "And you framed me to protect yourself," Bo said, his hand inching towards the knife at his side. "You were the perfect scapegoat," Thorne sneered. "A loner, an outsider, no one would question it." "It ends here, Thorne," Bo declared. "Your reign of terror is over." Thorne stood up, signaling to Clem and several armed men who emerged from the shadows. "You're a dead man, Price." The air crackled with tension. The final showdown had begun. It was Bo against Thorne, the outcast against the powerful, the past against the present, and only one of them would walk away alive. Bo knew he could easily kill Thorne and his men. His skills as a scout honed in the crucible of war were still sharp. He could dispatch them quickly and efficiently, leaving no trace. It would be justice, swift and decisive. But it would also be a return to the violence he had tried so hard to escape. He looked at Thorne, a man consumed by greed and power, a man who had destroyed innocent lives without remorse. He looked at Clem, a man who had betrayed his oath, a man who had allowed fear and corruption to guide his actions. Was this the West he wanted to create? A place where violence was the only answer, where justice was determined by the strongest hand, or was there another way? Could he find a way to bring these men to justice, to hold them accountable for their crimes, without resorting to the darkness that lurked within him? The choice weighed heavily on him. It was a battle between his past and his present, between vengeance and redemption. He had to decide, and he had to decide quickly. The lives of the people of Dust Creek and his own soul hung in the balance. Would he let the West remember who he really was, a killer? Or would he find a way to rise above his past and forge a new path? Bo made his choice. He wouldn't become a killer again. He would find another way. Using his skills as a scout, he created a diversion, drawing Thorne's men away from the mansion. He then confronted Thorne and Clem, not with violence but with the truth. He presented the letter, explained Thorne's motive, and revealed Clem's complicity. At first, Thorne and Clem denied everything, but Bo had anticipated their response. He had brought Billy with him, hidden nearby. At Bo's signal, Billy stepped forward and, trembling with fear, identified Thorne as the man he had seen running from Bo's cabin that morning. The townsfolk, drawn by the commotion, began to gather. They listened in disbelief as the truth unfolded, as the secrets of Dust Creek were exposed. Thorne's power, built on lies and intimidation, crumbled before their eyes. Clem, realizing the game was up, tried to escape, but the townsfolk, finally roused from their apathy, stopped him. Thorne, defeated and exposed, was left to face the consequences of his actions. Bo had cleared his name, not with violence but with the truth. He had shown the people of Dust Creek that there was another way, a way to stand up to tyranny, a way to reclaim their town. The sun finally set, casting a golden glow on a town reborn. The rope that had been intended for Bo remained unused, a symbol of the injustice that had been averted. The next morning, Bo stood outside his cabin, the same cabin where he had found Sarah's body just days before. The sun rose, painting the sky in hues of hope and renewal. The people of Dust Creek had changed. They were no longer fearful and apathetic. They had found their voice, their courage. They were ready to rebuild their town, to create a better future. Martha approached Bo, a small smile on her face. "You staying, Price?" she asked. Bo looked at the town, at the faces of the people who had once condemned him, now filled with gratitude and respect. He looked at his cabin, a symbol of his isolation, a reminder of his past. He had a choice to make. He could stay in Dust Creek, help them rebuild, find a place for himself in this newly awakened community. He could finally find the peace he had been searching for, or he could continue his solitary journey, forever marked by his past, forever haunted by the violence he had witnessed. He looked towards the horizon, towards the vast, unforgiving West. The possibilities were endless. The choice was his. Would he finally lay down his burden, or would he carry it with him forever? The answer, like the setting sun, was just over the horizon.